This is Caps PA announcer Wes Johnson, and you're listening to What the Pod!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new edition of What the Puck. It is a Washington Capitals podcast, which means it's a podcast about your 2018 Stanley Cup champions. Thank you all for listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Player.fm, Overcast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Facebook, and YouTube. Well, what is up, everybody? It is a Friday night. Friday night here as we're recording this episode, and the trade deadline has passed. Joining me, as always, to talk all about it, Coach Dan. He's here. What's going on, man? This might be the most active trade deadline we've ever covered.
In terms of number of trades over the past, week or 2 weeks, yeah, definitely seems like it is one of, if not the craziest one. No, not the craziest one, but the most number of trades is probably the least grammatic way I could have put that. But it's been a bit crazy in terms of the number of trades. I feel like we've had ones that were like, what? Like someone got traded. I don't feel like anything now. There weren't any trades that made me go, wow. There's one that made me go, wow. But more because of the tenure that a player was with the team, and Jonathan Quick. We'll talk about that later. You know what? Trade deadline came and went. Caps did some stuff. How do you feel about it?
Caps did some stuff, definitely. I feel like this is the most memorable one we have covered Caps-wise because they've been so active. Yes, we saw Stanley Cup champion Jacob Vrana leave town the last couple years or so, but I kind of feel like they've been quiet, or they've done depth moves, or they brought in Martin Erat. Those are the ones that come to mind for the Capitals. This one, though, it was the floodgates have opened. This team is a selling team, and I'm looking through the notes that you kind of put together, and I don't know what to call this because you're putting in the notes. It's not a retool. It's not a rebuild.
That's what everyone keeps talking about, and I'm not really seeing the tool aspect of it, right? Retooling implies that you've brought in, you're adjusting the roster, right? Say you trade, in the past, it was Vrana for Mantha, and then you make, one or two other trades where you're just switching a couple of guys around, sending out three guys, bringing in three guys like that. Okay, that's a retool. You're kind of fixing the roster a little bit. To me, this wasn't a retool, but I wouldn't call it a rebuild either, because everybody that left the roster, all five guys, they're all scheduled to be unrestricted free agents who are potentially gone anyways in a couple of months. So
is this brilliant? Is this brilliant? The fact that you got something back in return for guys that were probably going to be not signed again anyway?
I would say, I don't know if I would say brilliant, but I think it was the right thing to do considering where this team is at, because this is just not a good team this season. They are an average. I feel like every time we talk about them, we're like, yeah, they're an okay team. They're a good team. They're an okay team. They're an average team. They're a below average team. If you look at how they've been playing lately, they're not a playoff team. They're not the worst team, even though they lost to the worst team the other day. They went and beat them in their own house. But they're an okay team. They're an average team. This is not a playoff team. This is a team that isn't going anywhere. If they were in a playoff hunt, if they were fighting for the division, if they had a shot to do something in the playoffs or even make the playoffs, then I think a number of these moves don't happen. But looking at where they're at, I think McClellan looked at the roster. He looked at some of the ages of some of these guys. He looked at the realities of what they're going to want likely in the offseason in terms of dollars and years of they would want on a contract or a new contract. I think he looked at it and he went, this isn't working. This just isn't going to work out. They were this average age-wise, the second oldest team in the National Hockey League at the beginning of the season, and that's a problem. Because as we've seen, injuries have been a major issue. And it's not just all the old guys that are getting hurt. Some of the young guys are getting hurt. Pavari is out. We don't know if he's going to play in the next game. We've had some younger guys that have gotten hurt during the season. Beck Mallinson came up from Hershey. He was playing really well, and then he, blocked a shot, and then he was out. And now he's back in Hershey, I think, setting dudes up for assists in tonight's game. And so I don't know what to call this thing. I don't know what you would call it, but I think they made the right moves. I don't think they made enough moves. But I think they definitely did the right thing, because I don't think if they waited till the offseason, they would have been able to like get the draft picks that they got. And I know there's some concern about those. We can talk about that in a minute, but I'm curious for your thoughts in terms of like what they did. I like the moves they made. I just wish they made a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that these were all necessary moves, but I also think that we're in a weird spot right now because Alexander Ovechkin re-signed with this team to finish his career in the NHL to be a Capital. He's chasing the Gretzky record, and there was a promise that this team's going to do everything they can to be contenders for another Stanley Cup, because Ovi's got, a minimal amount of time left. He's got 4 years left in that contract. So for you to throw away this season and potentially throw away next season, that really says something. Like, are we trying to get a Stanley Cup while Ovechkin's still here? I still feel like he's the guy that will lead a team to a Stanley Cup. But if you're going through and you're making all these trades and getting all these draft picks that, if you're picking in the second, third, fourth round of the NHL draft, those are guys you don't see for maybe 5, 6, 7 years. You let them go finish off college, play in the World Juniors, play in the AHL for a little bit, and then potentially they come up. None of these draft picks are going to be people that Ovechkin plays with. None of them. So we're in a weird spot right now, because this is Ovi's final chance for a Stanley Cup, at least with the Capitals, and we're kind of looking past Ovi, which I know is a necessity. Ovi's not going to play forever. I realize that, but we promised the guy we're going to be contenders. The Caps will be contenders for the Stanley Cup as long as you're here. And pretty much right now what we're admitting is we're not contenders this year. We probably won't be next year either, but we're going to try to right the ship once you're gone.
Well, I definitely think, and it's funny because I think either Japers Rink or Peerless brought this up on Twitter in terms of like these draft picks are not going to help the Caps right now.
Nope.
That first round pick that they got from Boston and the Orlov for half. Well, real quick, let's go through the trades the Caps made, and I'll get back to my point. So first there was Orlov and Hathaway went to Boston for Craig Smith, who's also scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. A first in 2023, a second in 2025. I also found a lot of these trades from throughout the NHL were like draft picks in 2025, 2026. And I was like, I want to know how that conversation goes down. We're like, all right, we want a third round pick. We want it next year. Like, no. You can have it in 2 years. And you're like, what? Who's thinking that far ahead? Right. In terms of like, you know what? I definitely need a third round pick in 2026. Like, that's going to be what makes our team great. Right? That's just weird. So
but hold on. But before you bring up that, I just want to point out that Orlov Hathaway to Boston trade, the day
there
after,
was more involved.
The day after we recorded.
Yeah. Every freaking time they do that. And like Minnesota was involved in that trade. And we don't have to go through that because it's going to make my head hurt. Like trying to figure that out as it went down was so painful. And it was like the Caps got this other kid that's like a 26-year-old who's playing in Russia right now. But then, nope, he's going to Boston. No, he's going to the Caps. So I was like, can someone tell me what's happening? So then there was Marcus Johansson. He got sent. That's the second time the Caps have traded him. Just, I don't know. I kind of feel like if I'm him, I'm starting to take it a little personally. To
the same team, wasn't it?
No, they sent him before to New Jersey.
No, New Jersey. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So this time they sent him to Minnesota. They sent him to Minnesota, who he had played for before.
That's what it is.
So
right.
He's back in Minnesota. They got a 2024 third-round pick. They sent Eric Gustafsson and Boston's first-round pick to Toronto for defenseman Rasmus Sandin, who this is sounding pretty exciting about this kid. We'll talk about him in a minute. And then they sent Lars Eller, who's scored arguably the greatest goal in Caps history, winning them the Stanley Cup. I actually thought they had a nice little, on Twitter, a nice thank you to him in terms of capturing Emmerich's comment as Eller scored, where it was, it's Eller, it's 4-3 Capitals.
Yep.
They sent him to Colorado for a 2025. What? So far in the future. 2025 second-round pick. So those are the deals that the Caps made in terms of trades. But you're looking at 5 draft picks. 4 they're actually keeping because they sent that, again, Boston's first-round pick to Toronto for Sandin. And you're looking at that going, well, none of those guys that they draft there, if they even make it to the NHL, are going to be able to help during the Ovechkin era. He's got 3 years left on his deal after this season, assuming he doesn't sign another contract. And you're looking at it going, well, that's a problem. But then I was listening to Brian McClellan earlier today he had a press conference after the deadline. He was answering a bunch of questions from different reporters. And one of the things that stood out to me was he talked about the draft picks and how they're acquiring, and this is this is not verbatim, but he was talking about acquiring draft capital. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And he's talking about how he can also use them in the summer to turn those picks into players. And so is it taking those picks and making trades to other teams to bring in someone that can help now, or taking those picks and a player that's on the roster to move them out to bring in someone right now. So just because they went out at the moment and didn't bring anybody in that can necessarily help them retool, as a number of people are talking about, myself included, that doesn't mean they're not going to in the summer. And so I think we have to wait a little bit and see what they decide to do with these 4 extra draft picks that they've got, because those picks can turn into players that can come in and help out. And maybe you do a thing like they did with like Brooks Orpik years ago, and they sent him to Colorado. He ended up getting bought out and then came back. Or they did with the Richard. Who did Panik get traded with? Why am I blanking on that one? Panik got sent. Was that the one with Vrana? Fermantha? No, that doesn't sound right.
No, that's not right.
It doesn't matter. Anyways, Panik was added on to a trade because they're like, you got to take him too. Like, we need him off the books. And so that's something they very likely could do potentially with like Anthony Mantha, who didn't end up getting traded, or someone in the offseason.
How mad are you that Mantha wasn't traded?
I'm not mad. I just don't understand it. Like, he's not producing. The thing is, like, some of this stuff, like, okay, you're making these trades and you're freeing up cap space for this season. All those dudes were scheduled to be unrestricted free agents next year, so their cap hit didn't mean anything for next season. So in terms of helping the salary cap for this year, which given how they're going doesn't really matter anymore, but given their salary cap for this season, doesn't freaking help. But considering they suck, it doesn't really matter because they weren't going to go out and bring in like a Timo Meier or someone that was going to cost a bit more. He ended up going to the Devils. Someone was going to cost a bit more to help them now. Like, if they were in win now mode, which, it'd be great if they were, but if they were in win now mode for this season, I think Mantha potentially was on his way out because of his cap hit. But the fact that they're not, they're probably like, screw it, we'll try again in the summer. Like, there's no deal to be had right now that necessarily would help them. And I don't think they necessarily want to throw in the towel. Like, they didn't go. Here's the thing I was thinking about.
Richard Panik, by the way, was a part of the Vrana deal.
Oh, the guys that they traded, and this is going to sound meaner than I'm intending, but that none of the guys that they traded were like dramatically helping them this season, aside from like Dmitry Orlov.
What about Johansson? Wasn't he like the second highest?
No, but that was the problem. Is that yes, but what I mean, and I know someone out there is like, you're an idiot. Like, no, that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is none of them were like keeping them close to the playoffs. Like, leave the team as they are and make none of these trades. They're still going to suck and they're still not going to make the playoffs. Like, the Capitals and the Penguins are both kind of in the same boat to an extent. The Penguins are better than the Caps this season. That's what the standings show, and the standings don't lie. So the Penguins are going all in to try and win this season, and I don't think it's going to work out. The Caps were like, this is not working out. We need to a little bit. You know what they did? We're calling it a reboot. They're going to reboot after the season. They've gone, you know what? It's the old Nintendo. They're taking the game out. They're blowing in the little cartridge. They're blowing in the machine. They're going to reset and try again next season. That's what the Caps did. They went out and they got draft capital to try and be able to make some trades to reboot this roster in the offseason. So I think it was the right move. I think Orlov's the only one, which he would have probably cost too much money after the season or in the summer, but he's the only one that I would think that I would go back and go, well, you know what? I really think he was the guy that really could help this team or was doing really well for this team this past season. Hathaway was nice to have, and no offense, but there's a lot of guys that can play the way that Hathaway can play. He's very good. He's the guy you want if you're a team that's going to go into the playoffs because he's going to be hard-nosed, physical guy. Which Caps, they don't need that right now. I mean, they need that, but they don't need him pushing for them in the playoffs, like, because they're not going to be in the playoffs. Johansson's nice to have, but I'd rather have someone that's a bit younger that could probably produce to the same extent. Gustafsson actually really liked. I like what he was doing, but I think that opportunity to bring in a guy like Rasmus Sandin, who I'll admit firsthand, I know nothing about him. When I saw the trade, I was like, I didn't even get his name right. I thought it was Sundin. I was like, that's kind of cool. It'd be like, the Sundins of the past. So, I did a little research on him, but Maple Leafs Twitter is pissed that they gave this kid up, and like he got buried in their depth chart, and he, had I think a couple of injury issues earlier in this season. And, that's going to happen. But They're not happy. I mean, he was a first-round pick by the Maple Leafs back in 2018. He's only 22 years old. He signed through next season, so they have some time to see what they've got there. He's apparently an offensive defenseman, but he's willing to lay a hit. Like, he's not afraid to hit somebody. He could be a really nice piece that just got added. This defense just got younger, where at one point the only guy under 30 years old was Martin Fevari. Now you got Fevari, you've got Sandin, you've got Alexiev, who should be getting more minutes going forward. They just brought up Vincent Iorio, and who was the other kid they brought up? I'm blanking on his first name. Was it Garrett Garnett? Where did it go? Gabriel. Sorry, I knew it was with a G. Gabriel Carlson. They brought them up. They're both, according to McCullough, they're both going to suit up in the game tomorrow against Brandon. I have no idea. I don't remember who they're playing tomorrow. San Jose? Who are they
San Jose.
Hey, I was right. So, these are young guys that are getting opportunities to play in the NHL, which is what they need. This team is getting younger, which they so badly have needed this season. They just took too freaking long to do it. Like, if they'd gone in December, or although they're playing well in December, so they wouldn't have really had a reason to, but January even started making some of these moves and try to bring in some younger guys that, not necessarily like Iorio or Carlson, but how many people, by the way, if this Carlson kid turns out to stick around, are going to be confused by there being two Carlsons, but one of them has like two S's in their name? Like, how many fans would be like, they spelled his name wrong?
Yeah.
People are going to be very confused. But it's, I like what they're doing. I think the rest of the season is an opportunity to play some of these young guys. I'm a little worried that Laviolette's the guy that's doing it, because I don't think he likes playing young players. I think he likes having the veterans there because they've played in the NHL. They know what they're doing, and that's what you technically want on a playoff-bound team, but that's just not the Caps right now.
The thing about Dmitry Orlov, you got to think about too. A lot of people brought this up. No, I was never a huge fan, but it was really weird to see him in a Bruins jersey the first time I did. But he's a free agent after this year, so technically he could be a rental for these guys. There's nothing stopping him becoming a Capital again July 1st.
No, thank you.
You don't want it?
No, so because I think it's going to cost too much money, and I think that's not the issue the Caps have. Here's my top six for next season.
He doesn't take a Russian home discount to be with his boy Ovi?
No, I think he needs to go out because it's going to be probably his last big contract. My guess is he's looking for 6 years, 7 years, probably $8 million a year, something like that. Like, that's my guess. I mean, he's 30 years old. This is his last big contract, likely, unless he gets like a 2-year deal. That I'm guessing, but that's my guess. He's going to be looking for something like that. So you're looking at, he wants to get a nice big deal this is his big opportunity, right? To get a big free agency contract. I don't know who he's going to get it with. Maybe Boston finds a way to bring him back. I don't know what their cap situation's like, but no, because I see, assuming everybody's healthy and ears don't get hit again with pucks, you're looking at John Carlson with Fevari. You're looking at likely Sandin and Jensen, who they re-upped, and then he proceeded to get injured right after getting re-upped. Jensen signed a 3-year, $12.15 million deal. Cap hit comes out to 4.05. A little bit high for me in terms of, I think, although he's had a really good season. But you know what? He's 30 years old. So he'll be 33 by the end of his deal. I don't think that's a big problem. I think you don't want to go completely, Carlson and a bunch of young guys, because there's young guys are going to make more mistakes. And so that's a problem for a team that wants to be back in the playoffs next season. But I think you have, like I said, Carlson, Fevari, you have Sandin and Jensen, and then do you bring back Trevor Van Riemsdyk, who didn't get traded, and have him pair up with the Alexiev, and there's your 6th defenseman next season. And you know what? I don't necessarily mind that. Alexiev needs an opportunity to play. I think he can, as long as he comes in and has a good camp, I think that should be his spot. And then you've got, an older guy that's been in the league for a while with a younger guy who's still, Favari's still young, but he's been around for a while now. But you've got a nice group of 6 defensemen who can play in the NHL, and there's still opportunities for other guys to come up and get minutes.
So what are the chances now, do you think? So I guess you already kind of said it, but you think this team is not making the playoffs this year. They've got 19 games left. Is this a tank so we get a chance to be the number 1 draft pick, or is this just a play as hard as you can and we'll land where we land?
The second option. I think they play as hard as they can. I think they're going to give more minutes to young guys, at least on the defense. They didn't bring in any young guys on offense. But I think, you bring in the young guys on defense, you let them get some minutes. It looks like we won't see John Carlson until maybe the end of March, early April, towards the end of the season. Maybe he gets a couple of games at the end. But, the young guys need to get minutes in the NHL, and this is their opportunity too. But I think this is a Caps team that just didn't work. And so they decided to reboot it a little bit, and we'll see what happens in the offseason. But I want the young guys to play, and they'll end up where they end up, but it's not going to be in the playoffs. And it would be an epic hell of a run if they go into make the play. Like, they have to win almost all of their remaining 19 games and hope for a little bit of luck. Although I can imagine if you win most of your 19 games, you're probably getting in, luck or no luck. But they're going to have to go on one heck of a winning streak to be able to make the playoffs. So I don't think they're going to tank. I don't think when you have a guy like Ovechkin on the roster, you're going to be able to tank because he scores goals. So I would imagine you let the young guys play and let's see what happens.
So what kind of reboot do you think this is going to be? Is this going to be like, The Force Awakens, or is this going to be like Bewitched or something like that?
They didn't start over. I don't even like Star Wars, and I'm like arguing for it. What am I doing?
All right. So what was that? So it was
what's a good? I'm trying to think of a good reboot thing. You know what it is? Here's a good reboot for you. I think it's like going to be like Batman Begins. When they rebooted the Batman franchise, that's what it's going to be. I didn't really care for the Batman, the one with Pattinson. That one was fine. A little long. Catwoman didn't even have to be in there.
No.
Disrespectful to her character to have her in there as just for show. Like, give her something to work with. That was embarrassing for her. A great actress, great character, gave her nothing to do. It was a pointless, like, if you have someone like Catwoman, she needs to be more involved in the overall story. You could take her out and you'd have the same story. That's a problem.
The villains were the best part of the Batman. Like, I couldn't stand
Paul
Pattinson.
Dano's a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
Pattinson was fine.
No.
He was fine. For me, the best Batman's Christian Bale, and it's Nolan. But Christopher Nolan's my favorite director. But I'm saying Cap's got to reboot like Batman Begins. They're going to go into the offseason. They're going to fix a couple things up. They'll get a little bit younger. I mean, they've already done that by re-signing Milano and Strome. I think they're another piece that I thought was interesting from McClellan's press conference today is he talked about the core group of Caps guys are a bit older, and he kind of subtly said it, but he slid in there that the core might change in the offseason.
He did say that.
So I do wonder if he's looking at it going, you know what, some of these guys, and if I had to make a guess, I would say the core is Ovechkin, Backstrom, if we're just talking forwards in my mind. Ovechkin, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, and Oshie. That's and Tom Wilson. You're not moving Tom Wilson, although I don't know if you saw that joke going around on Twitter. Did you send that to me?
I don't
about
think so.
That dude, Tyler Kennedy, used to play for the Penguins, talked about how Tom Wilson was getting traded to the Penguins. Stay tuned.
I did not see that.
Caps Twitter was like, what? And he was screwing around and messing with people, which was kind of funny because I saw it and I was like, huh, nuh-uh. And then I was like, no, wait, they would never do that. The Caps, I mean, they would never do that.
No.
So I thought that was funny. But no, I mean, Wilson, if there's 3 untouchable guys on this roster, but probably 4. Carlson, Wilson, Ovechkin, Backstrom. You're not trading Ovechkin and Backstrom because you want them to retire as Capitals. If something comes up and their contract ends and then they decide to sign for another team, that's a different story. But you're not trading Tom Wilson because, you think he's going to be the next captain. I think it's John Carlson.
He's the next captain.
I think it's either him or Carlson. And I don't think you trade John Carlson because he's your best defenseman. Ear or no ear. And so I did think it was interesting that McClellan said that. So I think it's either Oshie, which would be disappointing, or Kuznetsov, who I think definitely gets you more in a return. Oshie, I feel like, is a guy you trade at the deadline. Like, I'm almost a little surprised he didn't get traded at this trade deadline, because he's a guy that a team like a Boston or Carolina, as much as, I'd hate to see him in Carolina colors, although they're basically the same colors we have. But like that, he's a guy that I feel like you would trade because another team would be like, he could help kind of push us to that next level that really gives us an opportunity to win. The problem is he's got 2 more years left on a deal that pays him. It's got a cap hit of 5.75. So that's a tough choice for another team. So I thought that was really interesting from McClellan that he talked about potentially moving out some of the, not some, but potentially that the core might change in the offseason. And that could have been as simple as like, well, Milano and Strome are now part of the core. That's not how I was going to say read it, but it's audio. So that's not what I heard. What I heard is someone as part of this core might be moving out.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I think, I mean, Kuznetsov, we were begging to let him go last year, if you remember. You and I were both saying, like, this is it. He's done.
It
Move
made
on.
sense to me.
Yeah. But he's kind of done better this year. I don't think he's perfect, but he's done a little bit better this year. Tom Wilson, he's your next captain, so he's the guy that takes over after Ovi leaves. Ovi, like you said, Ovi and Backstrom, they're not going anywhere. So I could see a guy like TJ Oshie, who is kind of injury prone, potentially leaving, and maybe this is more of a I'm ready to call it quits type of thing. Maybe it's him just going, I think it's time to hang him up. Although TJ Oshie doesn't seem like that type of guy who is going to voluntarily leave the game. But I don't know.
He's only 36. Like, he's definitely got a couple more years left, right? Like, I think his next contract is probably a 1 or 2 year deal, probably half of his cap hit now. If I had to guess, I don't think it'll necessarily be with the Capitals. I think they're going to want to get younger. I think Oshie's probably on a good team, a third line. He's on the Caps right now. I believe he's third line winger. And so, he's a guy that a team that is looking to make that push is going to bring him in on low money to get a veteran, like a New Jersey right now where they got a bunch of young guys. You bring in an Oshie. That actually would have made sense at Deadline if they, after they got Timo Meier, if New Jersey would have been interested in Oshie. But like, you bring in an older guy, a veteran guy, a guy who's won the cup, a guy who plays the game the way you need to play it in the playoffs. Do you bring in a guy like Oshie? I think that cap hit probably scared some teams off of that. But I wouldn't at all be surprised to see a little bit of a shakeup of the core in the offseason.
Now we look at the Hershey Bears, and they're doing really well in the AHL. I mean, they're one of the top teams in the AHL. Is there enough talent next year to bring up to make this a playoff team next year? Is there enough talent in Hershey to make everybody kind of turn their heads and go, yeah, this was the right move? If we're looking at March 2024 and we're going, yeah, it was right to let all these guys go. Hershey's just brewing with talent, and we're going to bring them up, and they're faster than ever. Is that something we're going to be saying?
No, not in the way that you're phrasing it, I think. Because, I think there are guys in Hershey. I mean, the Caps went out and signed Ethan Frank to a 1-year deal, starts next season.
Yeah, he's been turning a lot of heads.
I mean, literally, he skates really freaking fast. And so he gets going, you're like, whoa, where did he go? But he's leading the Bears in goals right now with 24. He's third on the team in points with 41. He's got 24 and 17. He's behind Mike Vicione. I don't know. I was at a Bears game. I can't remember how to pronounce his name. And Mike, apparently he's behind both guys named Mike. And Mike Scarbosa and Mike Vecchione? Mike. It's Mike in the morning. And so he's behind those guys in points. But aside from that, he's doing pretty well. I think he's got an outside shot. He's a rookie right now down there in Hershey, or up there, geographically. And so he's got an opportunity next season potentially to come in and do something. I'm sure they're going to give him a nice long look in training camp in September. But there are a couple other guys that, I think, Connor McMichael, Hendrix Lapierre will both get looks at least in training camp. I think, let's be honest, the new coaching staff are likely going to do things a little bit differently than this coaching staff, where they'll give some of the younger guys, as well as I imagine McClellan when looking for new coaches. And I think part of that's because Laviolette's contract is up and they're probably just going to go their separate ways.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to want to be they're going to be a team that's going to be pushing for the playoffs next season, which I'm sure a guy like Laviolette's going to want to be on a team that wants to be in the playoffs. Like, he's not going to go to Arizona or something like that. Watch now, he's going to sign with them. But I think the next coaching staff, there's going to be a message from McClellan of like, we've got some young guys that we want to see what we've got here. Like, you need to give them some minutes. But to an extent, they're going to have tape on them because they're going to get minutes now in the rest of this season, at least with like a guy like an Alexiev and maybe even an Iorio. Him and Gabriel Carlson will go back down once Favari and Jensen are back. And McClellan said in his press conference doesn't think it's going to be too long. So, maybe they're out a game or two. But I think a guy like Connor McMichael, Lapierre, I think Hendrik Borgstrom could get a nice look next season. Iorio definitely. Joe Snively definitely deserves to get another look. Do you see a guy like a Henrik Rubinski? Beckham Allinson, I actually think really has a good opportunity. Alexi Protas, Lucas Johansson, like these are all guys that could potentially make the team next season. I think if Mallinson hadn't gotten hurt, he'd probably still playing in DC.
Mm-hmm.
If I had
Yep.
to guess. And I think there are some people freaking out with because the Caps signed Abe Kubel to he's a 1 year, $1.225 million deal. Like that's not enough to me that says he has to play on the fourth line every night. I think for Abe Kubel, if Mallinson comes into camp and plays better, Abe Kubel's a 13th forward or 14th forward, depending on what they decide to do. And that's not a huge cap hit that a team that likely will be near the top again in terms of the ceiling for the salary cap, I don't think that's going to hurt you too much. It's not a, $3 million, $4 million that are sitting in the press box every night. And so I think Beck Mallinson's really going to get a strong look in the summer and in September to see how he's doing in terms of making this team next season. So I think there's a bunch of guys in Hershey that could make this team next year. I just don't think it's necessarily going to be what's going to make or break this team next season. Maybe on the defense a little bit, but I think Favari doesn't count as a Hershey guy. Sandin doesn't count as a Hershey guy. So I think it's one of Alexiev or Lucas Johansson that comes in and is that, fifth or sixth defenseman playing with someone like or is Trevor Van Riemsdyk. In regards to the forwards in the offseason, I think it's going to be some trades that they're going to make. I don't know if there's anybody that stands out really that's scheduled to be a free agent that I'm looking at going, yeah, this is the guy. Like, I think they're going to go and make one of those like Troy Brower for TJ Oshie kind of trades where you're going to go and you're going to find an established-ish guy who can come in and play in the top six. And I think they need a winger and they need a goal scorer. And, unless they trade Kuznetsov, then you're looking for another center, unless you're going to have Backstrom and Strome be your 1 and 2. And if that's the case, then do you need a center? Is that McMichael, or do you need a center to take over for Lars Eller as your third line center? Because this team had some trouble finding a third line center prior to trading for Lars Eller. And so I think there's a number of moves that'll all kind of coincide or work together. Like one domino falls in the next one, depending on what they decide to do in terms of where or what this team looks like next season. There we go.
I got to tell you, I was so incredibly happy I did not get a text from you around 3 o'clock this afternoon saying Connor McMichael's heading this place. Henrik Lapierre is heading this place. Like, I was so worried this entire week that those guys were going to be hitting the road. And yeah, we did lose a lot from the Caps here and a lot of established names, but I was so happy that there was nothing that happened to the AHL level. Like, all of this young talent that was a part of this team has stayed with the Capitals, and I think that's a good thing.
Oh, 100% agree. And I think there was always the chance that they could have been moved, but it would have been for a deal like the one we're talking about here, like the Sundin kind of trade. Like they would have brought in a young guy, a 22 to 24-year-old, 25 maybe, like someone that could help the team now. That, if McMichael or Lapierre make the NHL team next season, you're looking at it going, well, we have our guy who's also going to be around for quite a while. Like, I don't think that would have been something that would have hurt this team going forward necessarily, depending on what they brought in. If they went and brought in a 33-year-old, I'd be like, or a 30-year-old, I'd be like, that's not a great plan. Like, if they went and got a younger guy, I'd be like, okay, I can see why you did that. Like, that makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, I would have been anxious about that. I wouldn't necessarily been thrilled about it, but if they brought in someone that can help the team now, then it's fine with me.
Well, anything else we should cover here in Caps World?
I'm actually going through the notes now to see what did we miss. So who got hurt? I did find it interesting they hung on to Van Riemsdyk, but it sounds like that was where Elliot Friedman was talking about how the Caps were going to hang on to him because of the injuries to Jensen and Favari. I do wonder if the Caps would have moved him and what the offers were for Van Riemsdyk if those guys hadn't gotten hurt. I think that would have been, and then Dylan McElrath got sent back down to Hershey. So there's a couple of guys that the Caps didn't end up trading in Van Riemsdyk and Connor Sheary and Anthony Mantha that I think everybody was kind of expecting was going to potentially get dealt. And so I think it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens in the offseason. Sheary, of course, Craig Smith, Connor Sheary are the only forwards now. Remember, we had like a bunch of dudes. They're the only forwards now that are scheduled to be unrestricted free agents. Defensively, you've got Van Riemsdyk and Matt Irwin scheduled to be unrestricted free agent. If Laviolette goes, I wouldn't be surprised to see Irwin go. Right. And then you've got to re-sign Favari and Alexiev, but they're restricted, so they're under team control. You've also got Connor Brown. I totally forgot about Connor Brown, but he.
I remember that guy.
he needs to be re-signed if they decide they want to bring him back. And I think that kind of goes into his potential new deal goes, I think, along with who the new coaching staff is. Because they could look at that and go, you know what, this guy actually may have something. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a new deal right around what he was making now. Maybe it's even a 1-year deal of like a prove it kind of thing where he gets, okay, he's a cap hit of 3.6. Okay, you're doing, all right, we'll give you 3.75, 1 year, show us what you got. In terms, then does he get a longer deal and the Caps have an opportunity to sign him for a longer term, given he's going to be 30 on January 14th of next year. So, maybe you let him go and you bring in someone else. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they decide to do with him. But their situation in regards to what they need to do for next season, I think looks a little bit clearer now. And I think the fact that they traded a bunch of guys that were not going to come back anyways, like of all the players that they traded today, I didn't really see any of them coming back other than Eric Gustafsson. Like that's the one that I would have been like, okay, that makes sense. Like I think this team is going to look pretty different next season on the forward. Like the goalies aren't going to change. I think defense, we kind of have a good idea what we're going to see next season. I think forward wise is going to be interesting in terms of what we have. Like we talked about, could be a big trade. And it sounds like McClellan was kind of teasing it in terms of the core could have a bit of a shakeup. So I think that'll be really interesting to see next season.
Yeah, I guess we should say, and then there were, six left from that Stanley Cup year?
I think it's 5 now.
It's 5 now that Eller's gone?
I think with Eller gone, there's 5 left. And you know what? It's
to be expected.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little quick, but I also go back and remember those years where Chicago was winning cups like every other year. And they would rebuild or retool on the fly. I mean, they were trading guys left and right. They would max themselves out on a salary cap and then go into the offseason and be like, well, we're in trouble. And then they would trade a bunch of dudes and then rebuild it and win it again, like a season later. And so, the Caps tried, it didn't work out. And now they're rebuilding a little bit. But I do like that they're not doing full rebuild. They're rebooting a little bit.
They're rebooting, yes. I'm trying to remember what the last Scream movie called it. Was it a legacy sequel? They had a special word for it. I have to watch that movie again before the Scream 6 comes out. But they had a special name for it that had like characters from the old trilogy that come back for the new one or whatever. I can't remember what it was called. But anyway, so let's hope this is more Batman Begins than that 90s show. Let's hope it's more something good instead of something really, really kind of sad. So that's it for what's going on in Caps world. Before we get out of here, though, we do want to send our condolences out. Former What the Puck guest and awesome radio play-by-play man for the Capitals, John Walton, unfortunately, over this past weekend, lost his brother very tragically, very suddenly. We just want to put out there that John Walton, we are thinking about you. You are in our thoughts, and your family is in our prayers. And of course, everybody, not just Coach Dan and I, but everybody for the Capitals are thinking about you and your family and this just terrible time that you're going through. And I hope you know that we are all here for you, and we're thinking about you. And this is never easy. So we're here to support you and take as much time as you need to be with your family. That's the most important thing right now. So we're thinking about you, Mr. Walton, and you and your family. So we just want to end it there. But everybody, let's just have a quick moment of silence for John Walton's brother, and then we will come back and go down on the farm. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Here we go. We're going down on the farm. We are talking Hershey Bears and South Carolina Stingrays. Coach Dan, what's going on down on the farm?
Let's start in Hershey, where they actually switched up the main page on their website, and I really like the new layout. It's actually really helpful. It looks a little cleaner. It's got the schedule, and it's got standings on the front. I like it. It's a good call. Whoever fixed it.
Good job,
While you're checking it out, let's go ahead and talk about what happened in the past week? They went 2-1.
Ooh, look at
wins.
this.
Yeah, it does. It looks nice, right?
Look at the standings, the games, and promos. Nicely done, Bears.
I definitely like it. I think South Carolina, either they also mixed up their website or I just never have scrolled down enough. But they have their schedule. They have their schedule on it. On their front as well. But anyways, the Bears had 2 wins, one over Lehigh Valley, one over Wilkes-Barre Scranton. Bears are currently first in the Atlantic Division, 1 point up on second place Providence. Now they're back at it hosting Toronto at the Giant Center tonight, where they're up 3-1. Zach Fucale just made a save on a penalty shot, keeping that score at 3-1. We will update you as I don't know how much time. Oh no, it looks like there's about probably right around between 13 and 15 minutes left to go in the game. We're obviously following it on Twitter, so I don't have a live score update at the moment. Anyways, they are going to be hosting Providence on Saturday before they actually take a nice week off. Down in South Carolina, the Stingrays went 2-1 with wins over Fort Wayne and Atlanta. They're currently third in the South Division with 65 points, 5 back of first place Florida. They're also playing tonight, though I have not seen their score updated on Twitter anytime recently. So either that game is really boring or their Twitter guy fell asleep, which also makes it sound like it would be boring. Anyways, they're playing tonight hosting Atlanta at the North Charleston Coliseum. They'll do it again on Saturday night, also against Atlanta, before they host Orlando on Sunday. In other Stingrays news, they matched a franchise record with 5 team goals scored on the man advantage against Atlanta with a final score of 7-3. Let's get some prospect news in as 2022 third-round pick Alexander Suzdalev. He recorded his first career WHL hat trick on Saturday night against the Brandon Wheat Kings, the former team, Brandon, of Eric Fair.
Oh, okay.
Also, I feel like that should be your favorite team in the WHL for obvious reasons.
I was about to say.
Suzdalev has also been named the league's Rookie of the Month for the second time this season. I'm excited about this kid. I think him, Miroshnichenko, McMichael, LaPierre, like Caps have some decent prospects coming through. It's just going to be a couple years before we see these guys. That's what's going on down to the farm. Brandon, why don't you take us with the Wheat Kings? Take us around the NHL and
All right, everybody, welcome back. Here we go. We are going around the NHL and beyond. There is plenty of stuff to talk about because it is the NHL trade deadline, and Coach Dan's going to wrap it all up while I drink another sip here of my Pink Whitney's. It's not soda. It's just Pink Whitney. It's just straight vodka. So, Coach Dan, have at it. Tell us all about the trade deadline.
oh man, everybody buckle up. This is going to take a minute. I'm actually going to get my water ready because I may have to cut it because there are a fair number of trades that happened, and they started a while ago. The trade deadline, like actual day of deadline, has gotten super boring over the last couple of years because everyone gets traded ahead of time. I'd say the NHL should just bump the trade deadline up, but then they'll just make the trades earlier than that. So it won't,
Right.
It just made, I feel like the only people that really get affected by them making all these trades really early are the commentators. Because they spend a whole day of being like, I don't know what's going on. Like, what do you on your end? Nothing. What do you got? Nothing. Nothing's happening. Did you see? By the way, before we go through all the trades, did you see the TSN video about Boudreaux?
I did watch that. Yes,
that was brilliant. And there's one part where he almost breaks character that I thought was pretty funny. You see him starting to smile. I think it's when he's making fun of James Duthie, but I thought that was actually really funny. So that was well done, TSN. And can we get Boudreaux on the Caps broadcast? Oh, it'd be so much fun. It's not like he's going to be leaving Hershey, I would imagine, anytime soon.
I mean, there might be a head coach job available soon.
Didn't he say after Minnesota, he left Minnesota, or while he was still with the Wild, that he didn't really want to coach after that?
And then he went to the Canucks.
Yeah, I mean that didn't work out. But the Canucks are a mess right now. But anyways, here we go. Some trades. Now, I'm not including the trades we already talked about in weeks past. So we know a couple big ones went down right beforehand, like Bo Horvat going out to the Islanders and Tarasenko to the Rangers. But let's start with Nashville. They sent winger Nino Niederreiter to Winnipeg for a 2024 second-round pick. Dallas brought in winger Yevgeny Dadonov from Montreal for winger Denis Gurianov. Vegas got winger Ivan Barbashev from St. Louis for center Zach Dean. In a major trade, we brought this up a little bit earlier, New Jersey brought in wingers. This trade was nuts because it was like 9 dudes and a whole bunch of draft picks. Like, this surprised me. I thought it was just going to be like Timo Meier for a bunch of picks. Anyways, New Jersey got Timo Meier, Timur Ibragimov. You think I would try, but here we go. Defenseman Scott Harrington and Santeri Hataka. Goalie Zachary Emond and a 2024 fifth-round pick from San Jose for wingers Andreas Janssen, Fabian Zetterlund, defenseman Shakir Mukhamudalin, and Nikita Okhotiuk. A 2023 first-round pick, a conditional 2024 first-round pick, and a 2024 seventh-round pick. Now, apparently Tampa Bay doesn't believe in draft picks. They just send them out like it's freaking candy.
Yeah.
They sent defenseman Cal Foote, a 2023 third-round pick, 2023 third, fourth, and fifth-round pick, a 2024 second-round pick, and a 2025 first-round pick to Nashville for winger Tanner Gianna. Tampa does not care about draft picks. They have like 1 draft pick or something, 3 draft picks, something like that in the next, either at least this season, maybe even next season. Chicago sent defenseman Jake McCabe, center Sam Lafferty, and a conditional 5th-round pick in 2024 and 2025 to Toronto for wingers Joey Anderson and Pavel Gogolev, a conditional 2025 first-round pick, and a 2026 second-round pick. Carolina brought in winger Jesse Puljujarvi from Edmonton for winger Patrick Puistola. The Islanders brought in winger Pierre Engvall from Toronto for a 2024 third-round pick. Do you also see how Toronto traded? They have like 9 defensemen on their roster now. Like, they brought in Eric Gustafsson, and I don't even think he's in their top 6 at the moment. It's been weird. Toronto, not done there. They brought in, as I mentioned, they brought back defenseman Luke Shen from Vancouver for a 2023 third-round pick. Nashville continued their rebuild, sending defenseman Matthias Ekholm and a 2024 sixth-round pick to Edmonton for defenseman Tyson Barrie, winger Reed Schaefer, a 2023 first-round pick, and a 2024 fourth-round pick. Now, Minnesota didn't only bring in Marcus Johansson, as they got winger Gustav Nyquist and from Columbus for a 2023 fifth-round pick. Now, I know this one upset you a little bit. All right, so if you want to take a sip while we're going through this one, you can. Arguably, the biggest trade of this deadline occurred as Chicago sent winger Patrick Kane and defenseman Cooper Zek to the Rangers for defenseman Andy Welinski, a conditional 2023 second-round pick, and a 2025 fourth-round pick. I know a lot of people were expecting Chicago to get more for Patrick Kane, but he kind of forced their hand in terms of making that trade. So I think they got the best they could based on what was available and what they could actually pull off.
Now he's just a rental, right, for New York?
You know, I think I don't know. Is he? Hold on, let me check real fast. Capfriendly.com. Thank you very much. Dude, that guy, the people over at Capfriendly have been busy over the last 2 weeks. It's been a little nuts for them. Patrick Kane, yes, he technically is a rental, though I'm sure they could find a way to re-sign him. He's only 34. He'll be 35 on November 19th. So
is there any chance that he would go be a Capital in July?
If I'm the Caps, I'm not interested.
Okay.
We need to get younger, not older, which is what they'd be doing.
It's Patrick Kane. Could you imagine him? Like, I don't, just any combo.
It would be great. It just doesn't make sense in my mind, especially considering what he's going to cost.
Well, I'm going to get a Capitals jersey with his name on it. I'm going to put it right next to my Lundqvist t-shirt.
I think they have a better chance of getting a Vander Kane than Patrick Kane. Anyway, LA got defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov and goalie Jonas Korpisalo from Columbus for goalie Jonathan Quick. This is the only trade that made me go, wow, seeing that Jonathan Quick got traded. They also got a conditional 2023 first-round pick and a 2024 third-round pick. And we're going to bring Jonathan Quick's name up again in just a moment. Carolina got defenseman Shane Gostisbehere from Arizona for a 2026 third-round pick. Vancouver brought in defenseman Philip Hronek and a 2023 fourth-round pick from Detroit for a conditional 2023 first-round pick and a 2023 second-round pick. Ottawa, this one actually annoyed me. Ottawa won the Chukrin sweepstakes when they. Let me try that again. Ottawa won the Chukrin sweepstakes when they brought in the defenseman from Arizona for a conditional 2023 first round pick, a conditional 2024 second round pick, and a 2026 second round pick. I kind of feel like the Caps could have one upped Ottawa a little bit there and brought in Chukrin. That bothers me a little bit because I really think that could have been nice putting him, Carlson, Favari, Jensen, and Sundin. I mean, that's a nice 5 to be able to throw like Alexiev or someone in there as well. I really think that would have been nice, but didn't happen. We move on.
But the big thing here, it seemed to be the money. It was that Ottawa was willing to take on his contract where everyone else wanted Arizona to hold, like, still pay for half of his contract that he was due. And Ottawa was like, no, we'll take the money. We'll take the full salary as well. And that's how they won that sweepstakes.
I mean, I know he's got 2 years left on his deal, 4.6. So he's going to cost a bit, but this is a guy you can build your defense around.
Sure. But it was all about money. That's what it was.
To me, that doesn't make sense. For the Caps, I feel like they could have made it work. I don't know. I just feel like it was a missed opportunity for the Capitals. But we move on. They got Sandin. He's going to be a nice pick. He could, who knows? Maybe he'll end up being better. So we move on. San Jose brought in winger Vladislav Nemstikov from Tampa for winger Michael Eastamont. Pittsburgh got winger Michael Granlund from Nashville for a 2023 second-round pick. Boston got winger Tyler Bertuzzi from Detroit for a 2024 first-round pick and a 2025 fourth-round pick. Columbus, who had recently gotten Jonathan Quick, they sent him to Vegas for goalie Michael Hutchinson and a 2025 seventh-round pick. Edmonton got center Nick Bjugstad and defenseman Cam Dineen from Arizona for defenseman Michael Kesselring. I feel like that sounds like a name out of Star Wars.
It's true. The Kessel Run. 12
Kessel,
parsecs.
The Kessel Ring. And it's and a 2023 third-round pick. Chicago sent... This trade happened at like 11:30. Chicago sent center Max Domi and goalie Dylan Wells to Dallas for goalie Anton Khudobin and a 2025 second-round pick. Former Cap Jakub Vrana, he was sent to St. Louis from Detroit for center Dylan McLaughlin and a 2025 seventh-round pick. Pittsburgh continued to risk their future for the now, sending a 2023 fifth and seventh round pick to San Jose for winger Nick Bonino. Vancouver sent winger Curtis Lazar to New Jersey for a 2024 fourth round pick. Now, I mentioned earlier, we talked about Nemstikov. He went to San Jose. The Sharks then flipped him to Winnipeg for a 2025 fourth round pick. Pittsburgh stayed busy bringing in defenseman Dmitry Kulikov from Anaheim for winger Brock McGinn and a third-round pick. TSN didn't list the year that pick is in. Buffalo brought in winger Jordan Greenway from Minnesota for a 2023 second-round pick and a 2024 fifth-round pick. We got 2 more to go. Hang in there. Minnesota got Oscar Sundqvist from Detroit for a 2023 fourth-round pick. And finally, in a actually history-breaking trade, Brandon, Calgary sent winger Brett Ritchie and defenseman Connor Mackey to Arizona for winger Nick Ritchie and defenseman Troy Stetcher. Now, the reason this trade is interesting and noteworthy is it's the first time in NHL history that brothers have been traded for each other. Brett Ritchie is the older brother of Nick Ritchie.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. So I saw that trade. I was like, I wonder if they're related. Turns out they are. Now, trades weren't the only thing that was happening. Since we last talked, there have been a couple of big name signings. Detroit signed, actually, we may have talked about this one last time. I can't recall. Jake Wallman, defenseman for Detroit. He signed a 3-year deal. Cap it comes out to $3.2 million a year. We talked about Nick Jensen. Dylan Larkin also re-signed with Detroit. He was scheduled to be an unrestricted free agent. 8 years, $69.6 million. Cap it comes out to $8.7 million a year. He's 26 years old. He's not leaving Detroit anytime soon. Boston re-signed David Pastrnak to 8 years, $90 million. That's $11.25 million a year. And let's see, there was one more that I'm missing out on. Nashville re-signed defenseman Dante Fabro. He signed 1 year, $2.5 million. Now, it's not just about money. Well, actually, I guess this one is about money. That was about people getting paid. This is about people giving it back. Shockingly, one of them is Boston's Brad Marchand. He ended up getting fined $5,000 for a dangerous trip against the Blue Jackets' Oliver Bjorkstrand. Vancouver's Christian Wolanin, I wonder if any of these guys actually got traded that I just talked about. That didn't occur to me until just this moment. So I may have these teams wrong in the end. Vancouver's Christian Wolanin, he was fined $2,027.03. Don't forget about the 3 cents. That's important. He got fined for slashing Dallas's Ty Dellandrea. And Dallas's Colin Miller, he got fined $5,000 for what is going on with that game? That was 2 fines out of 1 game. He elbowed Vancouver's Nils Amon. In suspensions, Tampa Bay's Eric Cernak got suspended for 2 games for elbowing Buffalo's Kyle Okposo. And the Rangers' Keandre Miller, he got suspended for 3 games for unsportsmanlike conduct against LA's Drew Doughty. He spit on him. That's gross.
It is gross.
Why are you doing that? That's disturbing.
Have we learned nothing from COVID?
Yeah, for real. Come on now. In some rather interesting that I did not see coming, Nashville and actually former Capital general manager David Poile announced his retirement. He actually will be retiring on June 30th after 26 seasons with the Predators. He's the only general manager in Nashville history, and he's going to be replaced by someone we know quite well here in DC. Stanley Cup winning coach Barry Trotz will be the next general manager of the Nashville Predators.
I don't like it.
I like it for them. I was kind of hoping he'd come back to DC, but I guess that was never in the cards. And finally, a bit of Beyond News as Brianna Decker, an Olympic gold medalist and world champion. She announced her retirement from the U.S. women's national team this past Thursday. During her USA hockey career, Decker helped Team USA win gold at the 2018 Games in Pyeongchang and silver at the 2014 Games in Sochi and the 2022 Games in Beijing. Now, Decker also won gold on 6 occasions and silver twice at the IIHF Women's World Championships. Congratulations to her on an outstanding career with Team USA. And, yeah, it's fantastic to see. That's news for the past week in the NHL Beyond.
All right, Coach Stan. Well, is that the show for this week?
That's it, buddy. I'm sure something will happen tomorrow. Even though the trade deadline is passed, something crazy will happen.
Yes, that's how it goes here. Look out for Saturday. Something big
in the Bears game.
Uh-oh.
It's now 4-2, Hershey.
All right, go Hershey. Go Chocolate Town. I was actually in Chocolate Town this past Monday. I was a little bummed there was no game going on.
How much time is left in this one? That'd be nice to know. Looks like Bears scored the 4th goal at about 7:26 to go. That was about 2 minutes ago. So we're probably looking at, 4 minutes to go in the game? Probably around right about now.
Something about that. Something like that. Yeah. Well, if you guys would like to continue the conversation with Coach Dan or I, you can. It's real easy. All you have to do is tweet to either one of us. You can tweet to me at Brando Cash. Coach Dan, where can people tweet to you at?
You can find me on Twitter at WTP Coach Dan, talking all kinds of Capitals related stuff. I'm also on there talking about Arsenal Football Club, top of the table right now. Got a big game tomorrow against Bournemouth. Tomorrow being Saturday. And, also on there talking about the Bills. It's interesting things going on with their offseason with Leslie Frazier deciding to take a year off. On there talking about the Commanders. Lots of stuff should be happening actually around them. Positive things, ideally, in the next couple of weeks. Not so great things about the Commanders and your Ravens to an extent regarding these grades that the teams got. Commanders got an F in, everything. Not that anyone was shocked by any of this, but wow, that's embarrassing. But you know what? It all starts at the top, and hopefully the guy at the top is going to get the out of here pretty soon. So, but yeah, that's finding me on Twitter at WTP Coach Dan. But hey, if you've enjoyed the show, go ahead and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/whatthepuckpod. It's where we post when new shows are coming out, as well as all sorts of other things related to the Washington Capitals. Hershey Bears, who are still up 4-2. Be nice to know how much time's left in the game. On their talking about South Carolina Stingrays, the Hershey Cubs, the National Hockey League, and other things related to hockey that Brandon finds funny. We'll post them at facebook.com/whatthepuckpod. Brandon, just a moment ago we were talking. Actually, right here I'm seeing something about the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. If someone happens to be a fan of the same team that you follow, is there a podcast they should listen to?
So you can check out my Baltimore Ravens podcast called The Call. That's where we talk all things Baltimore Ravens. But it looks like the Baltimore Ravens are going through a rough patch right now because everybody's mad at them. All the players are airing out that dirty laundry right now. It's kind of sad. And they also got rid of the playmakers, which I'm really, really bummed about. They were like the Baltimore Ravens Red Rockers. But anyway, you can check out my Baltimore Ravens show called The Call whenever something happens. If Lamar signs this new deal that potentially is on the table from what I'm reading, he won't, but he could. We will be doing a show on The Call whenever that happens. I think we're kind of just on this offseason Lamar watch. That's all we're waiting for. Will he sign the contract? Will he not? That's nothing else matters until that happens. But that's my Baltimore Ravens show called The Call. Now, if you enjoyed this show, make sure you let people know about it. Let people know. Be social with the show. Let people know on Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and Pinterest and Instagram and Reddit and Snapchat and Twitch and TikTok and Discord and Hive. Anywhere you're social or on the web or with your phone, say, I'm a Washington Capitals fan. I listen to What the Puck, and you should too. So that is pretty much it for the show this week. Coach Dan, let's go over these games until we talk again. On Saturday, March 4th, the Capitals are in San Jose up against the Sharks. That game is at 6 o'clock in the afternoon here on the Eastern Seaboard. You can watch that show, or you can watch that game on NBC Sports Washington Plus. And then on Monday, March 6th, the Capitals are up against the Kings in LA, in Hollywood. That game is at 10:30 at night. Coach Dan's staying up. He's dedicated. He's watching that whole game.
Absolutely not.
Watch that one on NBC Sports Washington. And then we'll be back, I don't know when, so I'm going to give you the games for the two games after that as well. So on Thursday, March 9th, the Capitals are back home in D.C. They're back from the West Coast. That game's at 7 o'clock up against the Devils. You can watch it locally on NBC Sports Washington. And then on Saturday, March 11th, the Capitals travel up to Long Island up against the Islanders. That game's at 7:30 in New York, and you can watch that one locally on NBC Sports Washington. That is pretty much it for the show this week. Coach Dan, I got to tell you, I think that we guessed what goalie would be playing what game a week or so ago, and we completely got it wrong.
No,
like Darcy Kemper did
back-to-backs.
Kemper was
playing I said, well, that got that back-to-back part wrong, although it didn't go so well in the second game. I had him playing the Rangers.
Darcy smash, though, that was pretty great. I really enjoyed that. Like, he got angry, man. Broke that stick. He wasn't playing around. I'm never ticking that guy off.
That game was ugly.
Uh-huh.
This team is just kind of ugly this season.
Yeah, well, it happens to the best of us. Well, that is pretty much it for the show this week. Everybody, say it loud, say it proud. Let's go, Caps!
This has been a production of Brando Cash Entertainment. Music by DJ Wolfman, voiceover by Sarah Jacks. For more information, go to brandocash.com.